finding a research-based program to help students learn how to read is critical, and it's not optional in special education. That's exactly what we're going to talk about on this episode of the Special Education Inner Circle podcast. I've brought with me Beth and Karla from SLANT System to talk about research-based reading and how we can work together in helping all students achieve more in their reading skills. So Beth and Karla, thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having us.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm really excited to have this conversation, but just so everybody kind of knows where you're coming from, can you share how did you end up at an IEP table?
Sure. I'll go first. I'm Karla O'Brien. I knew very early on in my life that I wanted to be a teacher. I did grow up with a cousin actually that has Down syndrome, and I knew then special education was the path that I wanted to follow. So I have sat at an IEP table for about 22 years. I've been in the roles of teacher, mostly as teacher, administration, and then more recently as a parent. So I've always led each experience from, looking at it from the parent perspective. And if it was my child, what would I do? And just a true love for my students and always wanting to do what is best for them, thinking about their future and trying to come up with a good plan and form a really good partnership with everybody at the table.
Yeah. And I love that you have so many different perspectives and including that administrative kind of perspective, because a lot of times when we're talking about curriculum and strategies and supports and things, it leads up to the administrator kind of getting on board and supporting their team in that. So exactly. I love that piece. All right. And how did you end up at an IEP table?
Yes, I'm Beth Catlin, and I have been teaching for 22 years. I served as a kindergarten teacher for 17 years, a first grade teacher for a year, and the last 5 years I've been a reading specialist. And I, as the reading specialist, I really am in that role where I am the teacher who determines which students we can return to the classroom or who do we need to keep data on to help them to move to through the special education process. So I am often the one working with the classroom teachers saying, I think we need to bring this child up to the team to determine next steps, and ultimately working collaboratively as the lead, one of the lead members of the MTSS team, being the one to be able to talk through and collect data to determine next steps for students to make sure that their needs are being met and if they need to go through an evaluation process, and making sure, to be the one also oftentimes communicating with the parents of what we need to do next and what we need to watch for. And here's the process that we're going to go through to make sure that we are doing everything for your child that we can to help them. And just like Karla, I also have sat as a parent at the IEP table as well. So we both have both of the experiences of teacher and parent perspectives.
Yes. And I love it. And that, just parents, I want you to hear, like, when they kind of turn on their teacher voice through this and they start to share some things that they understand as a parent, what that feels like too, to have some of these tough conversations. So in fact, I'm just going to jump in there and call something out in education. So all of our listeners know that, I'm a certified teacher. I had spent time in the classroom and I went and got all the multiple degrees like a lot of special education teachers do. And I still never felt prepared to teach reading at the level that my students needed. And I blamed myself for that. Like, what did I not know? Like, what did I miss? Where are these tools? Like, I walked into an empty classroom. I want to just kind of speak to parents who need to know, like, this is happening, as in there's a lot of, specifically special education teachers who don't receive the type of education that they need in this. And then teachers, I want them to know that they're not alone. So can you guys just speak a little bit, like, did you guys feel prepared to be that intensive kind of reading support, reading teacher, the lead person when you guys kind of came out of school or those first few years of being in the system?
I think my experience as a classroom teacher was everything that I learned as a classroom teacher. And my undergrad was in early childhood. So I didn't have any, experience in teaching phonics, teaching, really was not prepared. I had to go out and train myself, to take a training program before I started teaching kindergarten on how to teach phonics myself. So that unless it was written into the curriculum and I got the training through the curriculum that my district was provided, I did not get that experience through my undergraduate college experience, which is really disheartening. And I struggled with that as a young teacher. Fast forwarding to getting my reading specialist degree, I learned, really powerful background stuff, but the structured literacy and the explicit instruction was not embedded in even my reading masters that I got. And that was, an evolution. And it took multiple other trainings outside of my degree to get to the point where I felt comfortable and confident in what I was doing and how I was approaching students with that.
Yeah. How about you, Karla?
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. I do say that I feel like I have always been very fortunate to be in school districts that have supported my professional development. And coming previous district that I was working in, we were trained in research-based methods. But I don't think, and it wasn't until the last district that I was in, that my 17th year of teaching, when I really learned about structured literacy and that method, truly what teaching reading needs to be, and the impact that can have, not only as a teacher, simplifying what I do, because I know exactly what to do when a student comes in. I can assess, I can look for those red flags and know what to do. Everything is laid out, but also from seeing the students excel, creating confidence in those students, happy parents that are saying, thank you. I don't know what you're doing, but my child is finally feeling confident in their education. But yes, to go back to what you were saying is, no, I don't feel that I was truly prepared coming out of college, knowing what to do. When I had a student that had reading needs, it truly is, I think a problem, a need across the country for many, many teachers. And I know teachers are desperate for that training. I think with a lot of, what's out on social media right now, and people are really understanding that there is a science behind teaching how to read and how the brain works. And teachers are really desperate for that. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just going to give an action step to everybody right now. Number one, if you are a teacher and you don't have a research-based curriculum, and again, this is speaking a lot to the special education teachers that just have a wide variety of students kind of assigned to their room, and you're begging for materials and just kind of pulling anything that you can get off the internet, spending your own money, doing those things. Like, you need a research-based curriculum. And I know it can be hard to go have that discussion with your administrator, but you need to do that. Parents, I need you to start asking questions about the curriculum that your child is using. Like, you need to understand, is your child working in a program that is going to make a difference? And today we're going to talk about structured literacy and SLANT System specifically, because that's what made a difference for both of you. In fact, it made a difference so much that you guys now are just running the show, right, for SLANT System. And I mean, so I just want you guys to know this as listeners, like, you are listening to the best of the best when it comes to SLANT System and what it can do, the results that can happen. And it's a resource that you need to know about. It's extremely accessible to school districts and teachers. I'm going to make sure to put it up here. You're going to see it on the screen. You're going to see links above or below. I want you guys to go check out SLANT System. But I want to know more about this term, structured literacy. So again, I did my homework. I dug into SLANT. So I could somewhat answer that, but I'm kind of like that new teacher when I'm like, okay, like, I see it, but I haven't practiced it enough. So tell me, what is structured literacy and the SLANT System?
Sure. So structured literacy is, it melds together the knowledge of sounds and symbols, phonemic awareness, vocabulary, syntax, all of that into one. But the piece to it that makes it structured is that we follow a very specific scope and sequence. So the teachers know exactly what they're teaching, what sound patterns they're teaching, what spelling rules they're teaching, what language concepts, in what order, moving from the most common sounds and in the most simple language concepts to the least common sounds and more complex concepts. Additionally, it is systematic. So it is very explicit. We are very direct with our teaching. We do not ask the students if they know something. We directly tell it. What we want them to know, we teach to them. And then it is also cumulative. So every skill builds upon the next. And it is diagnostic. So we are in the moment. It's individualized. We're assessing our student in the moment. What do they need to work on? What is working for them? And what do we need to keep reviewing? We do not move our students on until they show mastery at what they're doing. So it is very individualized. It is SLANT specifically is not scripted. So teachers have to have that training piece behind it to know how to do all of this and know when to move my students forward. It is highly effective for students. Also, it gives them a lot of, like I had mentioned before, that confidence, because anything we present to the students, we have explicitly taught them. So along with it comes what the big buzzword out there right now is decodable materials. And there is some some information out there that of what that is. But I can tell you from our decodable materials, everything that the student has in front of them, any text we put in front of the student is to practice the skill that we have just taught. So there will be nothing put in front of that student that they have not learned already. And decodable text just means that we have taught all the sound patterns, all the spelling rules, all the language concepts that appear in that text. So yeah, it's really successful for students, and it's very effective.
When I hear that you teach to mastery, that's so important, because a lot of times, again, in special education, what I see is splinter skills. I see this result, 3, 4, 5 years down the road where like the child's making progress, but then they hit a brick wall. They can't go any further because they're missing some of the foundational skills. And it's like having to go back and reteach and kind of fill in those holes where there were things missing. So when you say things like scope and sequence and teaching to mastery, like my heart is so happy. I'm like, yes, bring it on. I'm like, then we can really say, what is the present levels of performance, and how do we write this SMART goal, and how are we going to make sure that we have these measurable results, helping a child get from point A to point B, and really looking at the intervention as, being effective in a way that we can see it. We don't just we feel like this is working, or we see some progress. It's so definitive. And I love that so much.
It is really, as you're talking about goals too, we take that student's need, and those needs drive those goals. But, having a structured plan really presents a roadmap for us to follow, and knowing, if I continue on with this, my student will achieve all of that, just to know exactly what that student will be able to do, because we have that plan in place.
Yeah, it's so important. There's, with all of the things that we can research on the internet, something that's very popular are goal banks, right? IEP goal banks.
Yes.
So it's like, you put in I need a reading goal for a third grader, and some random goal comes up. And is it written as a SMART goal? Probably. If it's a good goal bank, it's written as a SMART goal. Got it. But is it a good goal for that child for where they're at? That's extremely questionable, because unless we're working within a scope and sequence in a research-based program, pulling random goals from just, here's a list of all the reading goals for third graders, that's not effective. Yeah. So I would love to know, Beth, what's kind of your favorite part or your differentiator when it comes to SLANT System? What got you excited as a teacher when you started to really dig into the system?
Just as Karla was just saying, I think the ability to having training in a lot of other programs, having a lot of other resources, this was one training that allowed me to determine where gaps were for students and know how to address those gaps, and being able to say, even to some, intermediate grade teachers, that I need to do a little more problem solving here to determine why this breakdown in comprehension is occurring. And I was able to take my knowledge from the SLANT system and use the assessments that come with our materials to be able to identify and say, this child is having comprehension issues because they are not fluently decoding multisyllabic words, and to be able to pinpoint exactly what they need to work on and go from there. And having that very something that was very measurable and something that allowed me to show growth or not non-growth, to see where they weren't growing and where the trouble was coming in, was really what really helped to guide me to the next level of what do we need to do for this child to address all of these concerns. And the training through SLANT system that I got, as well as Karla late in my career, really was a game changer. And I never looked back. I never really did anything else unless it was through determining those gaps from the training that I had received, if something else was warranted. So it really helped to not only give me a path, but also to plan the future and how I was going to work for that student.
Okay, so talk to me a little bit about what this looks like when you say multisensory approach too. So that was something that, we're not just talking about a bunch of flashcards of memorizing words. Like, this is so different than, memorizing words and having flashcards and going through maybe, some of our listeners here, they're thinking, well, that's how I learned reading. And it's like, yeah, but we've got, when we know better, we do better kind of things in that. So talk to me about what this looks like kind of hands-on for a child and for a teacher to really dig into this, SLANT system.
Yeah, I will say it is very simple. Once you know the method, it simplifies life as a teacher, and it simplifies life for the student because they'll achieve success. So the multisensory, I did leave that out that is part of structured literacy too, is that multisensory piece. So we are always trying to activate multiple modalities with a student, because if a student is ever stuck, they have 3 ways to retrieve that information. And I always like to draw it back to, like, when I was in college and I was studying for a test, I would write everything out because it made it stick. So we employ those same type of strategies with everything we do. So when we're teaching students new sound patterns, they are doing it. They are doing it with motion. They're saying it. They're seeing it, and they're hearing it. So that really emphasizing that everything we do, that is how we approach it. And if a student is stuck, we pull back and we say, okay, let's get out. We're going to get our hands out. We're going to get our pencils out, and we're going to do it, or pound. However, multiple, different programs use different techniques, but in actuality, we're all trying to do the same thing. We're trying to activate those different modalities.
Yeah. And that's something that I think when we're talking about something like math, that becomes very, natural. A lot of people are pulling out manipulatives, right? They're like, well, we're going to learn math and we're going to do this hands-on. And then you get to reading, and we're not using manipulatives and all of these different ways to connect and make all of everything stick in there. So I just want, especially for our parents who are like, well, what does this look like? It's like, well, you got to think about it. If you're teaching math and you're pulling out manipulatives to count things, it's very similar. Like, when I look at that, I'm like, okay, like here's a parallel to this of, like, we're pulling out different sounds and we're moving our body. We're moving and making sounds that go with, so we can really make this stick in there. I want to have you share a little bit, just a few seconds, on what does it take for a teacher to get trained in the SLANT system? Because as you mentioned, it's like, we all went through all this school and we all take all these trainings, and then the district wants different things from us. And it's a lot of overload, and there's a lot of pressure to, got to do more, got to do better. What I loved when I looked at SLANT, and this is one of the reasons I'm going to be bringing SLANT to all of our Master IEP Coach conferences for our parents, teachers, admins, and therapists, actually to get their hands on SLANT and really work hands-on with the materials and see how simple it is and how it can be integrated into their own school system in that way. But just give a brief overview of like what the professional development looks like to become SLANT certified.
We start with an introductory course. So it is a 16-hour course. We have a 3-day option and a 4-day option, and we can work with any school district to meet their needs of time constraints as well. So, but once we go through the introductory course, we give the background of dyslexia and structured literacy and why that this is critically important, multisensory structured literacy. And then we go right into the lesson plan where we're showing a full 50-minute lesson. And then we are working through each component of the lesson. And we are also, not only are we working through how you deliver the lesson, but why it is critically important and why the order of the lesson plan matters, and how we make sure that the lesson is implemented with fidelity. So immediately after that introductory course, teachers can start. They have everything that they need to know how to evaluate a student and to get started right away working with their students. Karla and I were trained in a January course, and by February we were doing this with our students, and we were working with them. We then also have an option after that introductory course for a year-long practicum. So during that practicum, there are 24 additional hours of instruction that come with that. And then teachers are given a coach for 5 coaching sessions to work with them, to be their cheerleader, to talk them through the process, to ensure the fidelity of the implementation. And that takes the pressure off of administrators who maybe aren't trained to do this. But administrators can say with confidence that our teachers have gone through this very elaborate process to ensure the fidelity of the implementation of the SLANT system and of this research-based method. So you can get started right away, and then there's the optional continuation of the to ensure the fidelity. So.
And I love that it just doesn't feel intimidating. That's why I wanted you to share that piece where it's just like you can get started. This isn't like you're signing up for the doctorate program of years and years of things. And you're like, okay, one more thing. And then eventually it's like you need solutions fast as a teacher. You need solutions fast as a parent when you're working with your IEP team. And a lot of times there's these extended delays in getting the services that we need. But I just want to kind of wrap this back around and encourage everyone that you need to know what curriculum is being used for reading inside of your child's classroom. Teachers, you need to go advocate for yourselves to get the training that you need so you can simplify your life when it comes to helping students make that reading progress. I'm going to ask one last thing of Beth and Karla. I want you guys to give like a 1 sentence each of what would you tell a struggling teacher at this time right now who's questioning, I don't even know if I can do this when it comes to reading or anything else in the school system. Our teachers are feeling burnt out and stressed at an extremely high level, especially with their staff shortages and all the things. So let's give some words of encouragement to the teachers who are listening.
Yeah, I would say that keep going. Keep going. There is a very simple solution. And I truly think that when you invest in your professional development, your own professional development, it's going to make everything else easier. We just have so many teachers that come in and they say, why haven't I gotten this sooner? Or, oh my gosh, I can't believe I've been teaching this long and I never knew this. And you think about how much easier your life would have been and how many more kids you could have been impacted had you just known. So yes, and there's definitely so much out there, and this training is phenomenal. And I truly, speaking as people who went through it ourselves, it really changed our lives and every student that we have ever worked with.
And this gives you what you need to get started. You are doing a great job. Being a classroom teacher, being a resource teacher, as a special education teacher is so very hard. We know that. But when you find something that you can kind of latch onto and it makes sense for you in your own brain as the teacher to be able to deliver it to your students with confidence, it really empowers you as the educator to know the impact that some of your learning and those few hours that you spent on that professional development can make a difference in hundreds of kids' lives.
And I would like to just add to say, we do thank you so much because, as teachers who've been out there and as parents as well, we thank every single one of you teachers because, you're in this for children and it's hard. It's hard when you have so many things coming at you and you have your own life to juggle. But yes, we do appreciate everything that everybody is doing.
Okay, so again, I'm just going to make sure everybody knows that you're going to have all the links to all the things that you need so you can look over SLANT for yourself, so you can have the conversations with the administrators and the teachers, your fellow teachers, if you are teachers, parents, bring up this conversation and start, helping level up the expectations in special education. I'm also going to encourage you that if you learned something new here today, if you could comment, share, if you are on Apple Podcasts, leave a 5-star review. Every time you comment, share, or leave a 5-star review, it helps more parents and teachers find the resources that they need so we can build IEPs together that work in the real world to prepare everybody for further education, employment, and independent living. Thanks, Beth and Karla, and we'll see you next time on the Special Education Inner Circle podcast.
Thank you.